lap time 270, still slow from 157 over to 255. Are you considering life insurance? Penn Mutual's accelerated client experience makes applying for life insurance fast and easy. Ask your independent advisor or go to pennmutual.com/STL. I'm Roger Brand in the Michaels FlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
News, traffic, and the latest on the Redbirds. This is the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour on a Tuesday evening. Nate Gatter with you. Stefan, Caray joins me. We'll be with you all the way up until 6. Then we'll have Sports Open Line until 8. So lots of Cardinals talk in the next hour, sports talk for the next 3 hours for you here on KMOX. Stefan, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast, and let's get into it.
All-Star festivities underway down in Atlanta. Home Run Derby last night. Cal Raleigh won it. We had extensive discussion on this station between myself, producer Kyle Sixta, Bernie Miklas, who was in your chair yesterday, talking about all the possibilities for the Home Run Derby. And obviously, any prognostications that we do are speculative, especially for something like the Home Run Derby. But we shamefully hardly talked about Cal Raleigh at all, of all the people not to spend a lot of time talking about. And he looked like somebody who wanted to be there, somebody who wanted to leave his mark on that event, and he did indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a controversial victory for Cal Raleigh. That was something that I think a lot of people would have talked about after last night's win. Brent Rooker getting left out with an eighth of an inch is really the differentiating factor between Raleigh and Rooker. And then Raleigh decided, hey, I'm going to swing left-handed the entire time, and he took off from there. So you really could make the argument that O'Neal Cruz could have won the Home Run Derby, but it really seemed like the guys were interested in playing and winning that prize. Junior Caminero, after losing, just looked a little bit dejected, which just goes to show that this isn't just a fun event for the fans. It's something that people are really enjoying competing in.
And obviously, you know, the prize pool plays a part in that. Even for major leaguers, $1 million is a lot of money. And you mentioned Brent Rooker. You know, he makes $12 million a year, but that doesn't mean he's not interested in an extra $1 million for that night's work. And based on the numbers that ESPN put on the screen on their graphic, they were essentially telling you that the StatCast data, in theory, was measuring both of their home runs down to the 1/1000th of a foot. Billion with a B. So we're talking about fractions of inches here. And for anybody who wasn't watching, the 8 guys all took their first round. You had to be in the top 4 to move on to the semifinals. Raleigh and Rooker both hit the same number. I think it was 17 home runs in their first opportunity. They were tied for 4th. Only one of them could go through rather than a swing off or something that would take longer, sort of in line with what's been the ethos of how Major League Baseball has changed the Derby over the last several years. They want to be efficient. They want to be quick. They want to get through it. And they just took whoever hit the longer home run, and it was decided by just narrow margins that even people who are producing StatCast, who are in charge of the engineering of StatCast, let alone people who follow it closely, would say no one is pretending that 470-foot home runs can be measured accurately down to fractions of inches. That nobody's making that claim.
Yeah, I don't think that was the claim that was really being made by anyone. It was just more so the production value of it, the pomp and circumstance of a 38-homer man before the All-Star break. I'm sure that extra, billionth of an inch for Cal Raleigh was something that might have been manufactured, but it presented a good show for the fans, and I didn't mind it one bit. It finished in good fashion. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was a lot more fun to watch than in recent years because there were a bunch of new contenders, a lot of new contestants to the Home Run Derby. And to your point, right, a billionth of an inch, that looks like trying to recite pi. That's what it was looking like to me after the decimal point. Try to figure out which numbers line up. And Cal Raleigh just was the fortunate one last night.
Maybe some Cal Raleigh superfan who has pi memorized out to 100 digits is going to memorize the exact digits that got Cal Raleigh through to the semifinals and ultimately won him the Home Run Derby. We're going to get later in the show to plenty of Cardinals talk about where they are, kind of this mid-July swoon that they had going into the All-Star break and what it means for the deadline, which is looming in just a couple of weeks' time. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about the All-Star game coming still tonight and kind of address that a little bit. I'm most looking forward, I think, beyond and above everything, to just seeing them wearing their normal uniforms again. We've been clamoring for that for a while, that all the guys and the home team, in this case the National League, would wear their whites and all the guys away would wear their grays. Is there anything aside from the aesthetics of the game that you're particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Nate. Sometimes you lose the plot in the All-Star game that the name on the back of the jersey is more important than the name on the front. And I think it's the opposite. The name on the front is what gets you there. You are representing an organization, a city, a fan base. And when those jerseys were gone, it felt a lot more sterile. And I like the uniform idea. Hey, you want to get guys all wearing National League uniforms, American League uniforms, but the Skittles look of, hey, here's a Cardinal here, an Atlanta Brave here, a Washington National here, and on the other side, Yankees, Red Sox, and all the other American League teams, it was more aesthetically pleasing. So that's a lot of fun. And for me to go see Brendan Donovan go to work and all of his hard work get recognized at the national stage, maybe an underrated player by many respects, gets the chance to show what he can do at Truist Field.
In some ways, and I spent some time yesterday talking to Bernie Miklasz about how maybe you can argue that Brendan Donovan is representative of something that has sort of plagued the Cardinals, which is having a lot of good or very good players and not a lot of elite players. But at the same time, it is kind of fitting to have someone like Brendan Donovan there representing St. Louis, because even if the Cardinal way has been diluted in some ways and has had to be updated, and the Cardinals are sort of in the process of doing those things, of modernizing the ethos of the team, still, Brendan Donovan does kind of represent what you imagine when you think about the St. Louis Cardinals, somebody who can do so many different things well, is so versatile defensively, and can do at least some of, if not a lot of, everything at the plate.
Yeah, he's the modern embodiment of what made so many people fall in love with the Cardinals. He has really good bat-to-ball skills. He's a great defender at multiple positions, scrappy player. Yeah, is he going to be a 40 home run man? No. That's not who Brendan Donovan is, but he does what Brendan Donovan does so well that you've grown to love him for embracing that role and being that type of player. So he might be a player at a time, in the sense that he's more suited for the 90s era of baseball and trying to hit for contact in an era where power and swing and miss kind of dominates the game from an offensive standpoint. It's really refreshing to see players like Brendan Donovan come into the fold and be recognized for their skill sets.
One of the other themes coming into this All-Star game is that we saw a lot of pitchers, in particular starting pitchers, who turned down opportunities to be part of it, and that led to a lot of people getting included later on, including Jacob Misiorowski, most notably of the Brewers, who's only pitched in 5 Major League games, or had only pitched in 5 at least, at the time that he was given a spot on the team. Obviously, that wasn't his decision, and he can only say yes when he's given that kind of opportunity. But we do have at least a lot of the younger big-name pitchers, obviously the starters in Tarek Skubal of the Tigers and Paul Skeens of the Pirates, who did agree to show up and take the ball. I wonder if that's just a little piece of the All-Star game that we might see some more development on, that we might see Major League Baseball try to tweak or otherwise incentivize, because you can understand why the proposition of playing an extra game in the middle of the All-Star break is a little bit different for pitchers than it is for hitters.
Yeah, a lot more different. And it's a difficult question to ask for these guys. Do you want to preserve your arms? We know that pitchers, particularly starting pitchers, are creatures of habit, and sometimes to a psychotic level, depending on who you're talking about. It is a hindrance for them. I think it's something that we have to assess, it's something we have to approach, because you don't want these pitchers burning out in the middle of the season, especially in a game that doesn't count for anything. But I think that the managers and the coaching staff for this event know, hey, we're going to give them X amount of pitches or X amount of batters. And you don't necessarily get a full taste of what these pitchers can do if you've never seen them live, but you get at least enough of an idea. It's an appetizer. It's an introduction to their game that might make you want to go see them. And the frustration with Misiorowski, though I'm not saying it isn't a well-placed frustration from fans, let's go out and see what he can do in front of some of the best hitters in the world, and then we can sort of make our judgment. If he struggles, then you can really take out your torches and pitchforks and say, hey, this guy doesn't belong here. Or if he goes out and he shoves, then you really don't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that exactly shakes out, and if they are able to do anything that changes incentives for pitchers. And I will say, I think fans, it's easy to complain sort of in a knee-jerk way about, oh, in my day, the pitchers just took the ball and went out there. It was an honor to go to the All-Star game, whatever. I think any Cardinal, and I'm not saying Cardinals fans more so than anybody else are saying this, but any Cardinals fan who is saying those things, if it had been Sonny Gray who got the invitation and said, you know what, I don't think it's in the best interest of the St. Louis Cardinals for me to go and pitch in the All-Star game, I think they would have had the opposite reaction. So I find it hard to blame any particular pitcher for saying, I have to do what's best for me, what's best for my team in the interest of trying to, win a division, win a World Series, the things that matter above and beyond an All-Star game. We will take a quick break, and we come back. We'll dive a little bit into the Cardinals, get away from that Derby and All-Star break conversation because they'll be back at it in just a few days on Friday in Arizona. Talk about some of that schedule out of the break and how that might complicate things going into the deadline and what the outlook is for St. Louis. This is the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
Hey, this is Charlie Brennan. Have you noticed loose...
Oh, no worries, man. We used to do it all the time in the minors. Yeah, it's so I think it's just because two different sounds are coming through. No, I heard everything twice. Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, if it's something I need to adjust to, it's not a big deal at all. Um, I just making sure that I'm doing the right thing, dude. You guys are teeing me up well. So now I can't hear Nate. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So right now it's got echo cancellation checked, and then okay. Okay. Is Nate talking to you or talking to me? Okay, okay, good. Just making sure. Okay. Right click the tab at the top of StreamYard. Um, it's not showing me. Okay.
.70 Clarkson through Long Road and then approaching Prospect. Eastbound 64 a little heavy at the inner belt. Southbound 55 Gasconade Bates bumper to bumper dry on the south side right now. Westbound 44 heavy through the bridges. And westbound 44 from Union midway out to St. Clair's heavy due to a jackknife semi off the roadway. I'm Roger Brand at the Michaels Flooring Outlet.com Traffic Center.
Sponsored by Gloria Lou with your home sold guaranteed realty 314-325-6888.
Need to sell your home and you want the most money? The name to remember is Gloria Lou. Yes, Gloria Lou with your home sold guaranteed realty at 314-325-6888 and start packing.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
Nate Gatter, Stefan, Caray back with you for more Redbird Rush Hour on this Tuesday evening on KMOX. Promised we would turn our attention to the Cardinals. Stefan, before we get to talking about the trade deadline, which obviously is going to be a dominant storyline for the Cardinals over the next couple of weeks, let's sort of just take a breath and look at the State of the Union, which I think was trending in a really positive direction. And then in the last few weeks, the Cardinals got really streaky, some good, some not so good, and they limped into the break a little bit. 6.5 games out of first place now. Still 5 games over 500, but not maybe where they would have hoped to be if we were having this conversation a week or two ago. What, in your mind right now, are kind of the biggest couple of reasons for optimism against the biggest couple of reasons for pessimism?
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, this was a team that really, really stayed healthy. And toward the back end of the first half, that was not the case. Ivan Herrera going down, Arenado plagued by injury, Nootbaar. You can just look at the list of the players that had to go down or had to be sent out. And it was not the case. There wasn't as much consistency on the day-to-day with who was playing in the outfield or who was playing at third base. And because of that, you started to see it unravel a little bit for the Cardinals. And you could also kind of contribute that to the fact that this is a really young team. They're going to be streaky. They're going to have moments where they win 3 or 4 in a row and then lose 5 or 6 in a row, and you kind of scratch your head as to how that's possible. But that's how the Cardinals have played in 2025. I agree with your point, right? This was a team that at one point was 9 games above 500. They started to get close to that double digits above 500 mark, and then they go and they lose 5 or 6 in a row, which is a maddening thing to watch as a fan. But the plan was never to win the division this year, or you hoped it could happen. But if you manage to contend in the wild card, which is something they're still doing, a game and a half out of that final wild card spot, you're happy. So maybe we just need to levy our expectations a little bit and just look at the second half as a big opportunity. The schedule loosens up a little bit. 22nd strongest schedule in the league. So they certainly will have a chance to play against some weaker opponents in the second half and really gain some ground.
That schedule is a good point. And on the one hand, it seemingly would point toward go ahead and take risks. Don't be afraid to buy a little bit. Now, it is not in the cards to be all-out buyers, no matter what happens. I think the Cardinals could be 30 games over 500 right now, and they wouldn't be all-out buyers because that's just not the succession plan they have in mind for how this roster is going to look next year and 3 years from now and 5 years from now. At the same time, the schedule does present a certain amount of opportunity. At the same time as that, I wonder if it complicates things just a little bit for John Mozeliak, because between the end of the All-Star break and the trade deadline at the end of this month, they're going to play Arizona for 3, Colorado for 3, 4 against San Diego, and 3 against Miami. You know, only one of those teams, the Padres, have a winning record, and one of them, the Rockies, is the worst team in baseball. So I wonder if you almost worry about what if the Cardinals do come out and over those remaining 13 games before the deadline, they go 10-3 and they put themselves in a wild card spot and maybe are pushing on that division door a little bit again the way they were a couple of weeks ago. And that puts pressure on John Mozeliak to make a move for now. I wonder if he almost has to make up his mind during the All-Star break rather than being influenced too strongly by a really soft schedule the rest of July.
Yeah, I don't envy his job right now. I don't envy Chaim Bloom because this team has put them in an uncomfortable position in the sense that they're not bad enough to really go all out and have a fire sale, but they're also not a team that you are really like, we can win the World Series at this point in time. I think that's fair to say. So you're kind of caught in between two schools of thought. Do we buy or do we sell? And if we do buy, what kind of a player are we going to get? Are we going to go all in? Are we going to say 2025 is our year and maybe leverage some of our future assets? I think that the two qualities that the Cardinals and every other team for that matter are looking for, talent and years of control. The Cardinals are not going to go out and get a rental free agent. They're not going to get a guy that needs to get extended or is a free agent at this point. They're going to get a player that can be with the organization for the next 3 or 4 years. And I wouldn't be shocked if they offloaded someone. If you go addition by subtraction, you let go of some players, you replace them with some others, and you give some more runway to some of those young guys that haven't maybe gotten as much as we thought they would in the first half.
That's an interesting point, too. It's something we talked about with Bernie Miklasz quite a bit yesterday because he has been speculating on Lars Nootbaar as a possible Cardinals trade candidate. Not necessarily because, and obviously Nootbaar's injury complicates things a little bit at the moment, but not necessarily because he doesn't think Lars Nootbaar is a good player, but because part of this conversation is that other teams have to want the guy that you want to trade away, right? I mean, I think the Cardinals would be more than willing to flip Eric Fetty for pretty much whatever they could get for him, but that's probably not very much. Lars Nootbaar, on the other hand, has attracted significant attention. So it might be a question of balancing those kinds of things. And there is certainly the possibility the Cardinals are giving up a player who they're not necessarily looking to, quote unquote, get rid of, but who they are parting with in exchange for something else, which is how most high profile trades are going to go.
I'm just really encouraged by everything that's happened. If you are a St. Louis Cardinals fan, look at how the draft played out. John Mozeliak's never told me how to broadcast, and I would never profess to tell him or Chaim Bloom how to run a team or an organization. And I know for all the ire that has been developed with the organization from some fans over the past few years, the draft should be something that really encourages you for the direction that this franchise is going. And I think that we can start to decipher a little bit of what the plan is for 2025 because of the way that they drafted. They're looking, hey, we're adding pitchers now. I don't see them going out and trading for a pitcher at this point in time. What they do need outside of pitchers is they need right-handed hitting. They need right-handed bats. Those are probably a little bit easier to find and a little bit more cost-effective in terms of what you have to give away than trying to get a front-end number 2 starting pitcher, which the Cardinals need right now with the inconsistencies in their rotation. It's going to be a lot of fun to see. I think that those first few series, I'll be in Arizona with my dad to go take in the Diamondbacks. My time with their AA affiliate brings me over there to go see some of the guys that I used to cover. And of course, the Rockies, if they can get off to a good start and take, 5 or 6 of those first games, then we're in business. And I think the philosophy changes completely.
Take a break. Redbird Rush Hour continues after this on KMOX.
KMOX and 97.1 FM Talk.
Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
Redbird Rush Hour continues. We're with you until the top of the hour. Nate Gatter and Stefan Caray. You can get on the conversation, as always, by calling us at 314-436-7900. That's 314-436-7900. You can hear us live or on demand on the free Odyssey app. You can also leave us a voice message on that free Odyssey app, AUDACY. You can tweet us at KMOX Sports or comment on any of the stream destinations across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Stefan, a couple of things to talk about. I want to start with something interesting that I think you said right before the break, which was that it seems pretty unlikely the Cardinals are trading for pitching based on the amount of it they already have in the upper levels of their minor league system. That is intriguing. And on top of that, the amount of pitching, especially college pitching, that projects to move pretty quickly through the system that they drafted just the last couple of nights, including in the first round in Liam Doyle on Sunday evening, and that makes those trades unlikely at the major league level for at least this year. If the Cardinals are going to move through the remainder of the season, which with much the same pitching staff as they have right now, is there some optimism for Cardinals fans at the back end of that rotation with Miles Mikolas, who has mostly been, I think, better than he's gotten credit for, but certainly had some struggles in the middle part of the year. Eric Fetty, who obviously has really been pitching below his level for quite a while now, and Andre Palante, who's been kind of his normal up and down self, that they can find a little more consistent success and take some of the pressure off of Sonny Gray to have the 70-80% win rate that he has right now.
Yeah, I think the way that you look at this is like Jeff Goldblum's character talks about in Jurassic Park, chaos theory. You don't know what's going to happen one start to the next. You could have Eric Fetty have the same exact routine one day and have a bad outing, and then the same exact routine another and have an amazing outing. You just never know over the course of 162. And at this point, you're at about 70 left, a little less than 70 games left in the second half of the season. I think that there's really no way of knowing. I think if this team continues to stay in the hunt, the wild card, everybody's best foot will be forward. And whether or not that requires Fetty, Mikolas, Palante to turn out phenomenal starts, we'll see. I think offensively, as you get Herrera back, as you get Arenado healthy, as you start to figure out who your lineup is going to be day to day, because that's another factor that we haven't really talked about. The fact that with all these injuries, there's not been a whole lot of consistency in the order. You'll see more runs coming across, and that will give you and afford you the opportunity to give up more runs in turn. Now, I think even more so than what we were talking about earlier, this is a starting pitching staff that probably isn't going anywhere. Even if you are trading for a pitcher, you've got to find a way to let go of Fetty or Mikolas, and I think there has been not an unwillingness, but certainly a bit of hesitation toward offloading guys that are required big money or being given big money in the millions of dollars. So even if you wanted to add another starting pitcher, there's financial commitments that get in the way. I think that there's really a whole lot that we don't know in the second half, and it'll be fun to see how it all plays out.
It's a good point you make, too, that even if it's not for trade additions, at some point the Cardinals are going to need to create space in this rotation. Even before you talk about, somebody like Quinn Matthews, who has taken a little bit of a step back this year compared to his phenomenal 2024, but is coming at some point. Somebody like Liam Doyle, who the Cardinals probably would hope to have in the majors in the next 2 years or so, certainly in the next 3. Even before that, how much longer can the Cardinals go without finding a spot for Michael McGreevy, who I know has not, after the way he just burst onto the scene, has not commanded a spot quite to that same degree. He hasn't forced the Cardinals to put him in the rotation and keep him there, but he's knocking on that door. And at some point, you can only ask fans to watch so many Eric Fetty starts go the same way when a lot of people feel like maybe Michael McGreevy isn't, a future Hall of Famer or anything, but at the very least, they've seen enough to say, I want to find out a little more of what this guy has.
Yeah, and you thought, especially coming out of spring training, that he was going to be a fixture in that rotation. How well he pitched down in Jupiter during the spring. It was something that really he was the odd man out. And Mose said it. I think everybody around the organization has said it, is he's a major league pitcher that just doesn't have a spot. And he's done a good job controlling what he can control, maximizing his controllables, as some of those players talk about. But I think to your point, McGreevy maybe hasn't pitched quite as well as he did in his short stints last year. but certainly the others that he's nipping at the heels of haven't pitched well either. So it's really sort of one of those questions. What are you willing to take? What are you willing to give up? What sacrifices are you willing to make? And it's another example of the philosophy having to shift a little bit in the early goings of the season. Nobody expected this team to be as good as they've been. I don't think I did. I don't think very many fans did. Certainly a lot of the media in town didn't expect them to be as good as they are. And with that means that, okay, the whole runway idea changes to let's win some games. Let's get this young core some confidence and prove to them that if we can win with this group in 2025, imagine what we can do in 2026 and beyond.
Is important. It's hard, but it is important to keep that perspective of where things were before the season, when in Vegas they were projecting this to be a team 7, 8, 9 games under 500, and now here they are well above 500. And I mean, that number only got worse. That projection, when they started the season as poorly as they did, we were having really, really sullen conversations in April. So at the very least, we get to have conversations about an intriguing deadline as compared to what for a while in April looked like it might just be a lost season. We'll take one more break. Redbird Rush Hour continues after this on KMOX.
Traffic from the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
This traffic reports the service of Siding Express. Westbound 70 still kind of slow around O'Fallon Park, Kings Highway. It's bogged down from 170 all the way to the Blanchett Bridge, actually jamming 270 to our city in the middle of that. Rain showers, again, still an issue around a lot of the metro area. Northbound 270 slow south of Page to 70, south 270 south of Page, all the way down to Big Bend is busy. Westbound 364 jammed Bennington through 141, slow to the Veterans Bridge from there. Westbound 64 still bogged down from Kings Highway to McCausland, west of McKnight to 270. Both directions through the Chesterfield Parkways. The westbound side runs out to about Long Road, but then it starts opening up. Southbound 55 a little busy. Gasconade Bates. Looks like we got trouble eastbound 44 midway in from Cuba to Bourbon. There's a jam building there. And downtown, just westbound 44, a little busy past the Poplar. Westbound 270, 157 to 255 slow. We had a crash there. Transform your home with the beauty and durability of James Hardie Siding. At Siding Express, we specialize in James Hardie Siding installation. Visit sidingexpress.com today to schedule a free consultation. That's sidingexpress.com. I'm Roger Brand in the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Nate Gatter, Stefan, Caray with you as we continue on Redbird Rush Hour. And Stefan, one other thing that we should mention while we're having this conversation of sort of the back end of the rotation and the AAA guys who could be pushing them. Obviously, Takoa Roby is in that conversation with the numbers that he's put together across AA Springfield and AAA Memphis this year. An earned run average just over 3. He has struck out about 4.5 batters for every walk and better than a batter per inning on the strikeouts. And he's been especially good over his last 4 outings with Memphis. Unfortunately, he landed today on the 7-day injured list with an injury that is still unspecified. Obviously, 7-day is a good sign if that's all that we have to go off of for the moment. Nothing, no longer injured list stint than that, at least initially. But that's another name to just be aware of because, you know, he and McGreevy would be the guys most likely to take on some of those innings down the stretch. I don't think that it has any trade deadline implications because I don't think those guys were probably going anywhere anyway, but just something worth keeping in mind at this point.
Yeah, the best organizations have good pitching depth at the major league level and in their minor league systems. One of the big issues, I think, for the Cardinals that they've run into is their big three outside of McGreevy, of course, in Quinn Matthews, in Tink Hence, and in Takoa Roby, is they haven't been able to stay healthy. Matthews had never struggled with injury up until this point, and this year it caught up to him a little bit. Tink Hence has not been healthy virtually at all. And Takoa Roby, since being traded to the organization, hasn't really gotten that full head of steam like he did in the Rangers org. And when I saw him in AA, I mean, he was one of the best pitchers in the Texas League. So certainly the body of work will speak for itself when Roby is healthy. But the big question is, when is he going to be healthy? When are they going to be comfortable enough to say, all right, this guy can sustain for 150 innings? It was the same question for Matthew Liberatore. Is he going to stay healthy? It's the most innings he's pitched all year. By and large, he's done a nice job, but you almost wonder, hey, how long is this going to last? You don't want that with every single starting pitching prospect you bring up from AAA.
It's a good point you make about Tink Hence, too, because it's just really hard to get a worthwhile read on him because he has been effective. I mean, last year his numbers at AA were, in one sense, fantastic, a 2.71 earned run average for the season in a year when he turned 22 years old in August. He'll be 23 now in a few weeks. On the other hand, he only threw 79 and 2/3 innings in 20 starts. That's just under 4 innings per outing. And so even though the strikeout numbers were phenomenal, the overall numbers were quite solid, better than that, well above average. You're just at no point in his professional career have we seen him consistently throwing anything close to the number of innings that would be expected either on a per start basis or certainly over the course of an entire season of a starting pitcher at the major league level. So no matter how good the stuff is, no matter how good the results are when he's out there, it's really hard to project him in any way because you can't put a guy in a starting rotation in the majors to throw 4 innings every day.
No, you can't. But what the Cardinals have shown a willingness to do is start guys in the bullpen and then stretch them back out. Andre Palante is an example that comes to mind. And if that's the direction that you're looking at with Tink Hence, why not? Why not? If he gets to a point where he's knocking on the door of the major leagues, check out how he pitches in the pen because you have more starting pitching prospects coming up through the pipeline. You saw from the draft who all they took. This is a player that has premium stuff. He has really good command. He has a good idea of where his pitches are going, and his secondary and tertiary pitches tunnel extremely well and play off of each other well. I wouldn't be shocked if we see him in the bullpen at least for a little bit. And if it gets to a point where you need to have him be a starter, then you can reassess later down the road. But out of the big four, Roby, Hence, Matthews, and McGreevy, I think Tink's the kind of the odd man out at this point.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned, the injuries have been an issue for Matthews this year. They've been an issue for Hence throughout his career, and both Hence and Roby are on the injured list for the moment down in the Cardinals minor league system. We will take one final break. I promise this time it's the last one. And return with more after this. You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on the Voice of St. Louis, KMOX.
If you owe the IRS, you have a legal issue, and you need the Lance Drury Law Firm. Will
Been Caray with you. Don't forget, Sports Open Line coming your way just after the news at the top of the hour. We'll be talking more about last night's Home Run Derby, about the All-Star Game tonight. Brad Thompson from FanDuel Sports Network Midwest will join us at 6:20, discussing a lot of what we have been here during this hour, getting his take on where the Cardinals are right now, as well as looking ahead toward the deadline. We'll talk some St. Louis City tonight because they've made a couple of, one addition that's official already, a couple other reported additions. We'll be discussing that with Tom Timmerman during the second hour. Bill McDermott, Mr. Soccer, will also join us just after 7:30 this evening, talk about the U.S. men's national team's performance in the Gold Cup and how that affects the outlook for the World Cup coming to the United States next summer. All of that on Graybar Sports Open Line coming up in just about 15 minutes or so on the other side of the news at the top of the hour. Before we get to that, Stefan, tonight the All-Star Game will be getting underway in a little over an hour down there in Atlanta. We talked about it a little bit already, stuff that we're looking forward to. Is there, and it can be difficult to know what matchups you're going to get, right? We don't know how many batters somebody like Paul Skeens or Tarek Skubal will face. They're probably hoping it'll be 3 up, 3 down. They throw 8, 9, 10 pitches, and that's the ball game. Is there anything you're hoping to see, whether we know or not we will see it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I talked about it earlier on one of the shows I was doing this afternoon. I think they should stretch Jacob Mizorowski out and let him pitch 6 innings. I think that the whole world should have to eat their words and let Mizorowski add those innings. Obviously, he hasn't had enough innings to pitch in the All-Star game, so might as well let him get some innings in the All-Star game. To me, that seems like sound logic. But no, I'm really excited to see how the crowd reacts to Freddie Freeman returning. I'm excited to see how the crowd reacts to Max Fried's name being called. Just players that I grew up around and watching and admiring when my dad was with the Braves, and that great fan base getting to enjoy all the stars of the game converging at that beautiful ballpark. And of course, Brendan Donovan. How could you not love that story and what he's been able to do? All of his hard work, his preparation, getting the chance to be the representative for the Cardinals. I know that means a great deal to him. So you just never know what's going to happen. I imagine the baseballs are going to be flying. I think there might be a little bit of juicing going on with those baseballs for the national crowd. So I wonder who's going to make a big swing and who's really going to show up for this All-Star game.
Speaking of which, our Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health. Get back to the top of your game. We really only have one option. It has to be Brendan Donovan today. He is the only Cardinal who will be playing baseball anywhere in the world as far as we know, and hopefully for those guys' sake who aren't in the All-Star game, they're enjoying a little bit of downtime. So Brendan Donovan, who will be on the field at some point this evening in Atlanta, is the Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer, sponsored by Game Day Men's Health. Get back to the top of your game. One other thing that I would mention, you're talking about how the crowd will react. And I don't know that people who go to All-Star games think this way. It might just be me because, I'm kind of I think of myself as a baseball fan first and kind of a fan of any team second and third after that. I hope that if I were there, I would want to give a little extra love to some of the guys who deserve to be on this stage but don't necessarily get to play in front of big crowds in great atmospheres all the time, right? I'm thinking of Brent Rooker off the top of my head. Like, that's a guy that I would really want to celebrate. This is an opportunity for him. Look, he's a major leaguer. He makes a lot of money. He plays in major league ballparks all the time. I'm not saying he's suffering, right? He has a good life, and I'm sure he's happy to do what he does. But it would be nice to give a little extra love to those types of guys. Some of the guys from the, representatives from some of those struggling teams, even more so than the A's and the other smaller market teams and that kind of thing, just to show them that their work doesn't go unnoticed just because sometimes maybe what happens in Sacramento might slip under the radar.
Well, my brother, as many know that might be listening to this show, is the play-by-play man for the A's on TV for a select number of their games and loves Brent Rooker and has nothing but great things to say. And Brent Rooker's path to Major League, certainly not a linear one. He earned every bit of that contract and has become a force within that organization. He's become a fan favorite. And the introduction tonight is really valuable to him. A guy like Jonathan Aranda with the Tampa Bay Rays, that's a player to me that I think flies under the radar more often than not. He's sort of one of those Alec Burleson types that does nothing but hits and maybe continues to be more underrated than he should be. This is a perennial event that we see the same names over and over. And I love seeing Ohtani and I love seeing Judge and the best players in the world. That's That's great. But those guys are going to have more all-star appearances because of the way that the voting system works. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve it because they're the best players in the game. They are. But the way the voting works is it's a popularity contest. There are guys in there that statistics are not quite as good as others who were left out. So the ones that were brought in that maybe were those fringe players and have the chance to maybe get to their only all-star game is really, really cool to me. And I'm excited to see how they rise to the occasion.
Well, Stefan, we appreciate you being with us for this entire hour. Enjoy it tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Love KMOX, and thanks for supporting my dad and my family the way that you all have.
Stefan Caray with us on the Redbird Rush Hour. We will wrap things up with the news at the top of the hour and then back for Sports Open Line on the other side of the break. That's all for Redbird Rush Hour. Stay with us here on your home of the Cardinals, KMOX.
Hey, it's Matt, your leaf filter trusted pro. Gutters are an often neglected part of the home. They're also one of the most important. Clogged, overflowing gutters can cause serious problems like foundation damage or basement flooding, which can cost thousands of dollars to fix. Let's face it, cleaning gutters yourself is not only a hassle, it can be dangerous.